There's a moment in every life when the masks we wear begin to feel unbearably heavy, when the roles we've played, the identities we've clung to, the endless pursuit of more success, more approval, more control, suddenly feel like prison walls closing in around our hearts. You might be experiencing that moment right now. Perhaps you've achieved everything you thought you wanted, yet still feel empty. Or maybe you're facing loss, illness, or a profound sense of disconnection from what truly matters. This isn't a crisis, it's an invitation to remember who you really are beneath all the doing, all the striving, all the fear. Today we're going to explore how to come home to yourself, how to transform your relationship with suffering, and how to discover the profound love that has been waiting patiently within you all along. We're all just walking each other home. When did we first learn to be someone other than ourselves? Was it in childhood, when we discovered that love seemed conditional on our performance? Was it in school, when we learned to compete rather than collaborate? Or perhaps it happened so gradually that we can't pinpoint the exact moment we stopped trusting our own hearts and started looking outside ourselves for validation, for meaning, for God. This forgetting is perhaps the most profound tragedy of human existence. Yet it's also completely understandable. We live in a culture that worships the external, that teaches us from our earliest days that happiness lies in acquisition, achievement, and approval. We're told that if we just work hard enough, accumulate enough, become successful enough, we'll finally feel complete. But here's what nobody tells you. That path leads to a dead end every single time. The great spiritual traditions have always known this truth. The Buddha called it the first noble truth. Life contains suffering, and that suffering comes from our endless craving for things to be different than they are. The Hindu sages spoke of Maya, the cosmic illusion that keeps us believing we are separate from the divine source of all existence. Jesus pointed to the same truth when he said that those who try to save their life will lose it, while those who lose their life for love's sake will find it. But somewhere along the way, we stopped listening to these ancient voices of wisdom. We became convinced that we could think our way to happiness, that we could control our way to peace, that we could achieve our way to love. We forgot that we are already whole, already connected, already home. We forgot that the kingdom of heaven is within us, not in some distant future or far-off place. This forgetting creates a kind of spiritual amnesia that permeates everything we do. We wake up each morning already anxious about the day ahead, already planning how to fix ourselves, already strategizing how to get what we think we need to finally be okay. We rush through our lives like we're late for an appointment we can't quite remember, missing the extraordinary miracle of this very moment, this very breath, this very beating of our hearts. We spend billions of dollars trying to look younger, feel younger, stay younger. We hide our elderly in institutions, avoid conversations about mortality, and treat death as the ultimate failure rather than the natural culmination of life's journey. But what if I told you that death is actually one of our greatest spiritual teachers? What if I told you that learning to die well is the key to learning to live well? Death is not the opposite of life, it's the completion of life. It's not something that happens to you at the end of your story. It's something that's happening to you right now, in every moment, as cells die and are reborn, as thoughts arise and pass away, as the person you were yesterday gives way to the person you are today. You are dying and being reborn continuously, whether you're conscious of it or not. When we truly understand impermanence, when we really grasp that everything we cling to will eventually pass away, something profound shifts in our relationship to existence. The things that seemed so important yesterday, the achievement we thought we needed, the approval we were seeking, the control we were trying to maintain, begin to reveal themselves as temporary dramas in an eternal play. This doesn't make life meaningless, it makes life precious. When you know that this conversation, this sunset, this embrace might be the last one, you pay attention in a completely different way. When you understand that everything is passing, you stop taking anything for granted. When you truly accept impermanence, you discover the incredible gift of presence. The fear of death is really the fear of losing who we think we are. But here's the beautiful paradox. What dies was never really you anyway. Your body dies, but you are not your body. Your thoughts and emotions die, but you are not your thoughts and emotions. Your personality, your history, your roles and identities all die, but you are not any of these things. What you really are, pure consciousness, aware presence, love itself, cannot die because it was never born. This understanding doesn't come from thinking about it or believing it as a concept. It comes from the direct recognition of your true nature as the witness, as the awareness in which all experience arises and passes away. When you know yourself as consciousness rather than the contents of consciousness, death becomes not an ending but a transition, not a tragedy but a homecoming. Those who work closely with dying people often report that there comes a moment when the person stops fighting and surrenders to the process. In that surrender, something beautiful happens. The fear melts away, the struggle ceases, and there's often a sense of profound peace, even joy. It's as if the person suddenly remembers who they really are beyond all the roles and identities they've been carrying. This same surrender is available to us right now while we're still in these bodies, still living these lives. We don't have to wait until our deathbed to let go of who we think we are and rest in who we really are. We can practice dying daily, letting go of yesterday's version of ourselves, releasing our attachment to tomorrow's hopes and fears, and resting in the eternal now that is our true home. When you make friends with death, you make friends with life. When you stop running from impermanence, you start appreciating the incredible gift of this moment. When you release your grip on trying to make everything permanent, you discover the joy that comes from letting life flow through you rather than trying to control it. The mystics have always known this secret, that the ego must die for the soul to be born, that the false self must dissolve for the true self to emerge, that we must lose our life to find it. This death is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process of letting go, of surrendering, of allowing ourselves to be transformed by the love that we are. Perhaps the most persistent illusion that keeps us suffering is the belief that we are separate from each other, separate from nature, separate from God. This illusion is so fundamental to our ordinary way of perceiving that it seems absolutely real. You have your thoughts, I have mine. You have your problems, I have mine. You live your life, I live mine. This seems like simple, obvious truth. But what if it's not true? What if this sense of separation is actually a kind of optical illusion of consciousness, like the way the earth appears flat when you're standing on it even though it's actually round? What if the boundaries between self and other, between inside and outside, between human and nature, are more like temporary lines drawn in water than permanent walls built of stone? The deeper you go into spiritual practice, the more these boundaries begin to dissolve. You start to notice that the breath breathing you is the same breath breathing everyone else. The awareness looking through your eyes is the same awareness looking through every pair of eyes. The love in your heart is the same love that beats in every heart, that flows in every river, that shines in every star. This is not poetry or metaphor. It's direct experience available to anyone willing to look deeply enough. When you sit quietly and simply observe the arising and passing of thoughts, emotions, and sensations, you begin to notice that there's no clear boundary between the observer and the observed. The one who is watching and the experiences being watched exist in the same field of awareness. As this recognition deepens, you begin to feel your connection to the larger web of existence. You start to sense that you are not a separate wave on the ocean, but rather a temporary expression of the ocean itself. You begin to understand that you are not an isolated fragment of consciousness, but rather consciousness itself, playing at being an individual for the sheer joy of experience. This dissolution of separation doesn't make you lose your individuality. It makes you discover your true individuality. You realize that you are absolutely unique and simultaneously absolutely connected. You are utterly yourself and completely one with everything else. This paradox can't be resolved by the mind, but it can be lived by the heart. When the illusion of separation begins to dissolve, compassion arises naturally. How can you hate another when you recognize them as yourself? How can you harm the environment when you know it as your own body? How can you live in fear when you understand that there is nowhere you end and the rest of existence begins? This recognition is what transforms spirituality from a personal journey into a planetary healing. When enough people wake up from the dream of separation, when enough of us remember our fundamental interconnectedness, the world will transform. Not through force or manipulation, but through the natural expression of love that arises when we know ourselves as one. The beauty of this understanding is that it doesn't require you to become someone different. It simply requires you to remember who you've always been. Beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the fear, beneath all the stories about being separate and small and struggling, you are already whole, already connected, already home. You came into this world knowing this truth. Watch a young child at play, completely absorbed in the present moment, making no distinction between self and world, and you'll see someone who hasn't yet learned the illusion of separation. You'll see someone living from the natural state of unity that is our birthright. The spiritual path is not about getting somewhere you've never been. It's about returning to where you've always belonged. It's not about becoming enlightened. It's about recognizing the light that has always been shining through you. It's not about finding God. It's about remembering that you have never been separate from God, not even for a moment. After all these years of seeking, all these practices, all these insights and openings and closings, you discover that the journey home was always happening right where you are. You realize that you were never actually lost, just dreaming that you were. You understand that awakening is not an achievement, but a recognition, not a destination, but a homecoming to the love that you are and have always been. Living from the heart of awareness doesn't mean you become perfect or that life becomes easy. It means you learn to meet whatever arises with presence rather than resistance, with love rather than fear, with curiosity rather than judgment. You still have challenges, but you meet them from a different place. You still experience pain, but you don't add unnecessary suffering to it. You begin to live as both the wave and the ocean, as both the character in the story and the consciousness in which all stories arise. You play your role fully while never forgetting the larger context in which all roles are played. You engage completely with life while resting in the awareness that transcends all engagement. This is what it means to be awake in the dream. You participate fully in the human experience while never losing sight of the divine context in which humanity exists. You care deeply about the world while holding it all lightly. You love with your whole heart while knowing that love itself is who you are. The practices we've explored, presence, witnessing, service, embracing impermanence, recognizing interconnection, are not ends in themselves but doorways into this natural state of being. They are reminders, not requirements. They are invitations to remember what you already know, not methods to achieve what you lack. When you live from this understanding, ordinary life becomes extraordinary. Washing dishes becomes a meditation. Stuck in traffic becomes an opportunity to practice patience. Difficult conversations become chances to offer love. Every moment becomes a doorway to the sacred. Every breath a prayer. Every heartbeat a celebration of being alive. You realize that you don't need to go anywhere special or do anything extraordinary to touch the divine. You don't need to sit in a cave for 20 years or memorize ancient texts or perform elaborate rituals. The divine is right here, right now, looking through your eyes, beating in your heart, breathing through your lungs. This is the great way, not a path that leads somewhere else, but a recognition of where you already are. Not a journey that takes you away from ordinary life, but a deeper appreciation of the extraordinariness hidden within the ordinary. not an escape from being human, but a fuller embrace of what it means to be both human and divine simultaneously. We are all just walking each other home, and home is not a place we arrive at, but a recognition of where we've always been. Home is not something we achieve, but something we are. Home is not in the future or the past, but right here, right now, in this moment that is always beginning, always present, always perfect, exactly as it is. The great way is love itself, love as the ground of being, love as the nature of consciousness, love as the truth that connects all things. When you know yourself as love, when you live from love, when you see love looking back at you from every face you meet, you have found the great way. You have come home to yourself. You have remembered who you really are. And in that remembering, all seeking comes to an end. Not because you found what you were looking for, but because you've realized you were never lost. The great way was always right here, waiting patiently for you to stop running and simply be. Be here. Be now. Be love. Be home. The tragedy isn't that we forgot. The tragedy is that we've forgotten that we've forgotten. We've become so identified with our thoughts, our emotions, our roles, our histories, that we've lost touch with the aware presence that is our true nature. We've become actors who have forgotten they're in a play, completely lost in the drama of their characters' struggles and triumphs. Yet even in this forgetting, grace is always available. Even in our deepest confusion, our truest self is patiently waiting, like a loving parent watching a child play dress-up, knowing that eventually the child will tire of the costume and come home to who they really are. The spiritual path isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been underneath all the layers of conditioning, fear, and false identity. Once we recognize that we've been living in a kind of trance, once we begin to wake up from the dream of separation, we can start to find our way back home. But first, we need to understand the nature of the prison we've built around ourselves, the elaborate fortress of the ego that keeps us feeling safe but separate, protected but profoundly alone. The ego is not your enemy. This is perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of spiritual work. The ego is simply a collection of thoughts, memories, preferences, and defense mechanisms that helped you survive and navigate the world. It's like a loyal servant that has been working overtime to keep you safe, to help you fit in, to protect you from pain and rejection. But here's what happens over time. The servant becomes the master. The ego, which was originally meant to serve your deeper nature, begins to believe it is your deeper nature. It starts to run the show, making all the decisions based on fear, comparison, and the need to maintain a sense of separateness from others. It becomes convinced that its survive all depends on being right, being special, being better than others, or at least not worse than others. The ego's primary job is to maintain the illusion that you are a separate self, isolated from the rest of existence and therefore constantly under threat. It does this through a continuous stream of mental commentary that judges, compares, worries, plans, and analyzes everything that happens to you. It creates elaborate stories about who you are, what you need, what you deserve, and what you must do to be okay. This voice in your head becomes so familiar, so constant, that you begin to believe it is you. You identify completely with your thoughts, your emotions, your personal history, your preferences and aversions. You become convinced that this mental noise is the essence of who you are, and so you spend your life trying to improve the content of your thoughts, trying to have better emotions, trying to create a better personal story. But what if I told you that this voice in your head is not who you are? What if I told you that you are the awareness that observes these thoughts, not the thoughts themselves? What if I told you that you are the space in which all experience arises, not the experience itself? This is perhaps the most radical shift in perspective that spiritual awakening offers. Instead of being a separate self struggling to survive in a hostile world, you begin to recognize yourself as the conscious awareness in which all experience appears. You are not the waves on the ocean, you are the ocean itself, temporarily playing at being waves. The ego fights this recognition with everything it has because it correctly perceives that this realization means the end of its reign as the master of your life. It will create endless drama, endless problems to solve, endless reasons why you can't possibly be free right now. It will convince you that you need to become more spiritual, more evolved, more enlightened before you can rest in your true nature. But the truth is that you are already free. You are already whole. You are already connected to the source of all love and wisdom. The only thing standing between you and this recognition is the belief that you are the voice in your head rather than the awareness that hears it. The only thing keeping you imprisoned is the conviction that you are the character in the story rather than the consciousness in which all stories arise. This shift from identification with the ego to recognition of your true nature doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process of loosening the grip of old patterns, of questioning long-held assumptions, of learning to trust the deeper intelligence that has always been guiding your life. It requires tremendous patience, tremendous compassion for yourself, and tremendous courage to let go of everything you thought you knew about who you are. Yet even the smallest glimpse of this truth can transform your entire relationship with existence. Even a moment of recognizing yourself as awareness, rather than the content of awareness, can bring a profound sense of peace, of coming home, of remembering what you've always known but had simply forgotten. In our culture of constant doing, constant achieving, constant stimulation, we've lost the art of simply being. We've forgotten that presence is not something we need to create or manufacture. It's something we already are. We've forgotten that this moment, exactly as it is the only place where life actually happens, where love can be found, where God can be met. The sacred pause is not a technique or a practice in the conventional sense. It's more like a remembering, a coming back to what is always already here. It's the recognition that no matter what is happening in your life, no matter how chaotic or painful or overwhelming things may seem, there is always this moment of awareness, this space of presence, this breath that is breathing itself. When we pause, when we stop the endless mental commentary and simply allow ourselves to be present, something remarkable happens. The problems that seemed so urgent a moment ago begin to lose their grip on us. The emotions that felt so overwhelming begin to settle into a larger space of acceptance. The stories we've been telling ourselves about our lives begin to reveal themselves as just stories, not ultimate truth. This doesn't mean that practical challenges disappear or that difficult emotions vanish. It means that our relationship to these experiences fundamentally shifts. Instead of being lost in the drama of our circumstances, we begin to recognize that we are the awareness in which all circumstances arise. Instead of being overwhelmed by our emotions, we begin to see that we are the space in which emotions come and go like weather patterns in the sky. The sacred pause can happen anywhere, at any time. It can happen in the middle of a difficult conversation, when you suddenly remember to breathe and meet the other person's pain with your presence instead of your reactivity. It can happen in the midst of grief, when you stop trying to fix or escape your heartbreak and simply allow it to be held in the vastness of your being. It can happen in a moment of joy when you pause to really savor the sweetness of being alive. What makes the pause sacred is not any particular state of consciousness or emotional experience. What makes it sacred is the recognition that this moment, whatever it contains, is a doorway to the infinite. This breath, this heartbeat, this sensation of being alive, these are not obstacles to awakening, they are awakening itself. When we truly pause, when we stop trying to get somewhere else and simply arrive where we are, we discover that we've been looking for home in all the wrong places. We've been seeking peace in the future, seeking love in other people, seeking God in temples and churches and ashrams, when all along peace and love and God have been right here, closer than our own breath, more intimate than our own thoughts. The pause teaches us that presence is not a state we achieve, but a reality we are. It shows us that we don't need to become present. We need to recognize that presence is our fundamental nature. It reveals that we are not human beings, trying to have a spiritual experience, but rather spiritual beings who have temporarily forgotten our true nature while having a human experience. In this recognition, everything changes. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The mundane becomes magical. The present moment, which we've been trying to escape from or improve upon, reveals itself as the only place where real life is possible, where real love can be found, where real peace can be known. There comes a moment in every spiritual journey when life strips away everything you thought you needed to be happy. Perhaps it's the death of someone you love, the end of a relationship that defined you, the loss of a job that gave you identity, or an illness that forces you to confront your mortality. In these moments, when the heart feels like it's breaking beyond repair, we often think something has gone terribly wrong. But what if I told you that these moments of profound heartbreak are actually invitations to profound awakening? The heart doesn't actually break, it breaks open. There's a vast difference between these two experiences, though they can feel identical in the moment. When the heart breaks, it closes down, builds walls, becomes bitter and defensive. But when the heart breaks open, it reveals depths of compassion and understanding that were always there but hidden beneath layers of protection and fear. This breaking open is not comfortable. It's not pretty. It doesn't happen on your schedule or according to your preferences. It happens when life decides you're ready for a deeper level of truth, whether you think you're ready or not. And in those moments, you have a choice. You can resist the breaking, try to put the pieces back together the way they were, or you can surrender to the process and allow yourself to be transformed by it. When we resist our pain, when we try to fix it or escape it or numb it, we miss the profound gift it offers. Pain is not punishment, it's purification. It burns away everything that is not essential, everything that is not real love. It strips away the ego's pretenses and reveals the raw, tender, indestructible core of who you really are. This is why so many spiritual traditions speak of the necessity of suffering on the path to awakening. Not because suffering is inherently good, but because suffering has this remarkable capacity to crack open our defended hearts and reveal the love that has always been there, waiting beneath our fear. When we stop running from our pain and start moving toward it with curiosity and compassion, we discover that it's not our enemy, it's our teacher. The transformation of pain into compassion happens naturally when we stop making our suffering about us and start recognizing it as part of the universal human experience. Your grief is not just your grief. It's the grief of every parent who has lost a child, every lover who has been abandoned, every soul who has ever felt alone in the dark. Your fear is not just your fear. It's the fear of every human being who has ever felt vulnerable in an uncertain world. When we truly understand this, our pain becomes a bridge to others rather than a wall that separates us. Our suffering becomes a source of wisdom rather than a burden we carry. Our broken heart becomes a vessel for holding the pain of the world with tenderness and grace. This doesn't mean we become martyrs or that we seek out suffering for its own sake. It means we stop seeing our difficulties as mistakes or failures and start recognizing them as opportunities for growth, for opening, for deepening our capacity to love. It means we stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "How can this serve?" The most profound spiritual teachers throughout history have been those who have known the deepest suffering and allowed it to transform them into vessels of compassion. They didn't become wise in spite of their pain. They became wise because of how they met their pain. They didn't become loving because they avoided heartbreak. They became loving because they allowed their hearts to be broken open again and again until there was nothing left but love. As you learn to rest in presence, as you begin to recognize that you are not your thoughts or emotions, a profound shift occurs. You start to discover what the mystics have always called the witness, the part of you that observes all experience without being caught up in it. This is not a detached, cold observation, but rather a warm, spacious awareness that can hold whatever arises with unconditional love. The witness is not something you develop or create through spiritual practice. It's what you are underneath all the layers of conditioning, beneath all the stories about who you think you are. It's the aware presence that has been looking through your eyes since the day you were born, that has been present for every experience you've ever had, that remains constant even as everything else in your life changes. Most people live their entire lives without ever recognizing this witness consciousness. They remain completely identified with the content of their experience, their thoughts, emotions, sensations, memories, without ever noticing the aware space in which all of this content arises. It's like being so mesmerized by the movie on the screen that you forget about the screen itself, or being so caught up in the waves that you forget about the ocean. But once you begin to recognize yourself as the witness, everything changes. You realize that you are not the anxious person having anxious thoughts. You are the awareness in which anxiety arises. You are not the angry person having angry emotions. You are the space in which anger appears and disappears. You are not the sad person feeling sad. You are the consciousness that lovingly holds sadness when it visits. This recognition brings tremendous freedom because it means you no longer have to be at the mercy of your mental and emotional weather. You can have difficult thoughts without being a difficult person. You can experience painful emotions without being a victim of pain. You can go through challenging circumstances without losing your fundamental peace. The witness is not indifferent to what happens in your life. It's not a spiritual bypassing that avoids genuine engagement with the world. Rather, it's a deeper level of engagement that comes from a place of stability and love rather than reactivity and fear. When you know yourself as the witness, you can be fully present with whatever is happening without needing to fix it, change it, or escape from it. This doesn't mean you become passive or that you stop taking appropriate action in your life. It means that your actions come from a place of wisdom rather than compulsion, from love rather than fear, from presence rather than reactivity. You respond to life rather than merely reacting to it. The witness is also what allows you to recognize the same essential nature in others. When you see clearly that you are not your personality, your history, your roles, or your circumstances, you begin to see that others are not these things either. Beneath all the surface differences, beneath all the drama and stories, there is the same aware presence looking through every pair of eyes. This recognition is the foundation of genuine compassion. When you know yourself as consciousness temporarily playing at being a person, you can see that everyone else's consciousness temporarily playing at being a person too. The beggar and the king, the saint and the sinner, the wise and the foolish, all are consciousness wearing different costumes, all are awareness having different experiences. From this perspective, judgment becomes impossible. How can you judge another wave for being different from you when you both know yourselves as the same ocean? How can you feel superior to another person when you recognize that the same awareness that is looking through your eyes is looking through theirs? The witness consciousness is not something you achieve through years of meditation or spiritual practice, though these can certainly help you recognize it more clearly. It's what you are right now in this moment as you read these words. It's the you that is aware of being aware, the you that knows that you know, the you that remains present and constant even as everything else changes. If you've ever wondered why relationships can be so challenging, why the people closest to us often trigger our deepest wounds and biggest reactions, you're not alone. Most of us enter relationships hoping to find completion, security, or happiness in another person. We look for someone who will love us enough to heal our childhood wounds, understand us enough to make us feel whole, or be perfect enough to never disappoint us. But here's what nobody tells you about relationships. They are not here to make you happy. They are here to make you conscious. They are not here to complete you. They are here to reveal the places where you are already complete and the places where you still believe you are not. They are not here to fix you. They are here to show you exactly where you still need to grow. Every relationship is a mirror, reflecting back to you the contents of your own consciousness. When someone triggers anger in you, they are not creating that anger. They are revealing the anger that was already there, awaiting to be seen and healed. When someone's behavior disappoints you, they are not the source of your disappointment. They are showing you the expectations and attachments that were already creating suffering in your heart. This is why the most intimate relationships often feel like the most challenging. The people who love us most are also the ones who see us most clearly, who unconsciously know exactly which buttons to push to bring our unconscious patterns into the light. They love us enough to serve as mirrors for our growth, even when that service is uncomfortable for everyone involved. When you understand relationships as spiritual practice, everything shifts. Instead of asking, how can I get this person to change so I can be happy? You start asking, what is this person showing me about myself that I need to see? Instead of trying to fix or control others, you start focusing on healing your own reactivity, your own expectations, your own patterns of defense and attack. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or that you accept abusive behavior. It means you take responsibility for your own emotional state and your own spiritual growth. It means you recognize that you can only change yourself, but that when you change yourself, you change the entire dynamic of the relationship. Real love is not about finding someone who makes you feel good about yourself. Real love is about finding someone who helps you grow into who you're meant to be. It's about being with someone who challenges you to become more honest, more compassionate, more present, more authentic. It's about creating a sacred space where both people can be fully themselves, including the parts of themselves they don't like or don't want to acknowledge. This kind of love requires tremendous courage because it means being willing to be seen, really seen, by another person. It means being willing to have your defenses lovingly challenged, your patterns gently exposed, your heart gradually opened. It means being willing to love someone not because they're perfect, but because they're real. When you approach relationships from this perspective, they become doorways to awakening rather than escape routes from loneliness. They become opportunities to practice unconditional love rather than conditional transactions. They become sacred mirrors that reflect back to you the truth of who you are, both the light and the shadow, both the beauty and the places that still need healing. The greatest gift you can give to another person is your presence. Not your advice, not your solutions, not your attempts to fix their problems, but your simple, loving presence. When you truly see someone, when you meet them in their pain or their joy without trying to change them, you create a space where healing can happen naturally. This is love as the ultimate teacher, not the romantic fantasy of finding someone who will make you complete, but the mature recognition that love is a practice, a commitment to growth, a willingness to use every interaction as an opportunity to become more conscious, more compassionate, more real. Once you begin to recognize the sacred in yourself and in your intimate relationships, you start to see it everywhere. You begin to understand that every person you meet is a walking opportunity to practice love, to offer service, to recognize the divine presence that is looking through their eyes just as it looks through yours. Sacred service is not about grand gestures or dramatic acts of charity, though these certainly have their place. Sacred service is about bringing the quality of loving presence to every interaction, every encounter, every moment of connection with another human being. It's about recognizing that the cashier at the grocery store, the person who cuts you off in traffic, the difficult coworker, the homeless person on the street corner, all are manifestations of the same consciousness that you are. This recognition transforms the mundane into the sacred. Your daily life becomes a spiritual practice. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to offer love rather than judgment. Every challenging situation becomes a chance to practice patience rather than reactivity. Every person you meet becomes a teacher, a mirror, a fellow soul walking the path home. The practice of sacred service begins with the simple recognition that everyone you encounter is doing the best they can with the consciousness they have available to them in that moment. This doesn't mean you approve of everyone's behavior or that you don't take appropriate action when necessary. It means you recognize that behind every defensive behavior, every act of selfishness, every moment of unconsciousness, there is a frightened child looking for love and acceptance. When you can see this frightened child in yourself, you can begin to see it in others. When you can meet your own pain with compassion, you can begin to meet the pain of others with compassion. When you can forgive yourself for your mistakes and unconscious moments, you can begin to forgive others for theirs. This is not about becoming a people pleaser or losing appropriate boundaries. It's about recognizing that the boundaries you set and the actions you take can come from a place of love rather than fear, from wisdom rather than reactivity. You can say no to someone's behavior while still saying yes to their essential nature. You can take strong action while still holding space for the person's fundamental goodness. Sacred service is also about recognizing that you are not the doer of your actions. When you rest in the witness consciousness, when you recognize yourself as awareness rather than the ego personality, you begin to see that life is living itself through you. Your actions arise naturally from love rather than being forced by the ego's agenda. You become a channel for grace rather than a separate person trying to do good. This doesn't make you passive or ineffective. In fact, it makes you more effective because your actions are aligned with the deeper intelligence of existence rather than the limited perspective of the ego. You find yourself naturally drawn to the places where you can serve most effectively, to the people who can most benefit from your particular gifts, to the situations where your presence can make the greatest difference. The beautiful paradox of sacred service is that the more you give, the more you receive. The more you serve others, the more you serve yourself. The more you recognize the divine in others, the more you recognize the divine in yourself. The more you offer love, the more you become love. This is not a spiritual concept or a philosophical ideal. It's a practical reality that you can experience for yourself. When you approach your life as service, when you meet each person as an opportunity to practice love, when you recognize each moment as a chance to offer your presence as a gift, you discover that you are not depleted by giving, you are fulfilled by it. You realize that you are not separate from the people you serve. You are not above them or below them. You are them and they are you. And the service you offer is the recognition of this fundamental truth. In serving others, you serve yourself. In loving others, you love yourself. In recognizing the divine in others, you come home to the divine in yourself. If there's one teacher that our culture desperately tries to avoid, it's death.